Esosa, thanks so much. And thank you, Tara. I'm Tom Hallock. I'm co-chair of Force Multiplier. And before we get started with our traditional Force Multiplier Q&A, I'd like to invite you both into a short conversation, maybe just about 5 minutes or so, about a little bit more about exploring this connection between your work and voters and elections. Um, Changes in media and communications technology have always had political impact, whether it was FDR's use of radio for his fireside chats, Kennedy's use of TV in 1960, which I think many of the people on this call may remember, or Obama's use of social media. And now we're in yet another phase. What can we learn from the history and from our recent experience in the last election that will really help us better inform, engage, and turn out voters in 2026?
I'm happy to start, but I suppose I really want to kick it to you to talk about AI a little bit. To my earlier point about how I do worry that we're always kind of fighting the last war. Technology is moving so quickly, and the first movers are always the ones who have an advantage. And AI is about to change everything about communications. Not to add more fear into the puzzle, but we should talk about it. So we're not so behind on it. But I can talk a little bit about specifically what we're doing in Virginia right now. It's obviously a big election year in the Commonwealth of Virginia, state elections in the governor's race. And our newsroom there was actually our first ever newsroom, Dogwood. And I know Esosa's doing some work there too, so she should talk about that. But just to give a sense of what this looks like, our newsrooms are full-time year round. We never go dark, unlike campaigns or advertising programs or communications efforts that are usually funded just in cycles. But we do significantly ramp up our political reporting in advance of elections and really focus on how do we connect the dots between the issues that people are having in their lived experiences and the positions of candidates and the parties. And one of the ways that we do that, besides our everyday reporting that our reporters do, is that we have built out a local creators program to actually bring in folks who do not come from journalism or politics or advocacy, but who have built trusted communities around their own brands, whether they are chefs or personal trainers or comedians who are from local communities across Virginia. And we engage them in paid partnerships to actually have them reach their trusted communities with our journalism through their own style of TikToks or Instagram stories. And that's another way that we're just increasing our volume to drive offense. So with a lot of what Esosa is talking about, that roots a lot of the work at Onyx. It's the monitoring that was the monitoring and the research side about all of the nefarious efforts that we have to combat that are like a game of endless whack-a-mole. The best defense is always a strong offense, and that is true in media and in the information ecosystem. And so we need to know what we're up against, but then we need to think ahead and around corners to them and think about how do we engage locally. And I do really, obviously, I'm very biased having started a local news network, but local content, local information, local trusted messengers, they are bridge builders. They are people that can reach beyond partisanship and into people's echo chambers, into their algorithms and their news feeds, but also into their hearts and minds, because there is a natural sort of space for connectivity and relational connection between folks. And so I just believe local communications and media in general has been so under-resourced from the left. And it is a way, even working with these trusted messengers in these communities, to make sure that our message gets out there and that we can outsmart them a little bit. Because one thing the right does do, and they do it very effectively, but is they nationalize issues, right? And create cultural wedges. So until we are 10 times the size we are, which we can be with your help and other people's help, but until we are that big, local is a real avenue for us to be able to do that work. But again, we can't just be work focusing on the ecosystem as it exists today. We have to be thinking about our corners. And I don't want to tee you up, Esosa, because you should take it any direction you want. But Esosa's been doing some unbelievable pioneering work on the AI side in terms of finding, again, new and novel ways to engage and bring trusted information to Black communities. So, again,
Yes,
you don't have to talk about.
I will talk about our AI efforts and to move into that. I want to first to jump on something else that you were saying, Tara, about what this new media ecosystem looks like. And I don't know, people keep saying ecosystem, what, like, I want to talk about like shelf space, right? And how you can imagine that it used to be is a very limited shelf space. How do you get in front of people? There's TV, right? There's radio, right? There's maybe a little online, what have you. There are specific programs you can buy, but outside of that, you really can't get your message out to people, right? You've got, and so if that's all you have access to, then you're going to have a general message that you think is going to persuade the most people. What we now have with all of these social platforms is essentially unlimited shelf space, right? In a way, and massively fragmented communities, right? Because you don't need it, everyone can build their own community. And so the idea of using a general population persuasion strategy in a situation where we now have unlimited shelf space, unlimited niches, where folks are hyper consolidating how they get information, was insane to do last year, right? And that's why when you look at the right, them having so many platforms, so many distribution platforms for all of their shows, all of their content, right, was so important. And so I think one of the biggest things we have to realize is that if we are in a fragmented universe, if there's unlimited shelf space, this is not something that can be solved with one or two or three kind of organizations, right? And you've got to understand audiences in a much more aggressive way too. The advent of AI, what artificial intelligence means, what generative artificial intelligence means in this moment, right? Right now, AI can make far, far, far more believable headlines than a lot of news organizations. Right now, AI can create influencers that are incredibly persuasive, right? And so to Tara's point of let's not fight the last battle. Like if we invest tens of billions of dollars into into one bucket, and that bucket is taken over by AI in a year or two, right? What is going to be the impact? How do we instead leverage what's happening? And so at Onyx Impact, we have tried to get at both of these problems. It's both fragmented ecosystem problem. Where are Black folks actually getting their information from, right? We know more about that than most any other group online. Where are they actually located? And then two, we've created a amazing AI tool that our team that's much cooler than me has named Aisha, right? Located at the Digital Green Book that we launched in March, digitalgreenbook.org. And Aisha is a chat tool for Black communities, to serve Black communities. And the response has been incredible. And so what Aisha is going to be doing is going into all of these different networks, fragmented networks, showing people good information, sending people to good sources. It's going to be incredible, but I'll stop there.
Let me jump in here a little bit and just kind of move. I could listen to you two all day, and I know we were just beginning a conversation that would be engaging to all of us. I want to be sure that we're making enough time to get some of the questions in from the audience, and the chat is filling up with questions. And a couple of people, including Timothy Marsters, are asking about, we're discussing a lot the means of message distribution, but not sort of the content so much itself. Can you tell us a little bit more about, and this is something that came in from another member of the audience, David Serbaki, just, how do you decide what to focus on? What's your editorial policy? How do you craft the messages that we're trying to get out through this new distribution, means of distributing information?
Yeah, I'm happy to start on that. I mean, so my background starting in journalism and then into this work in politics and now sort of the convergence of the two, I really am a political communication strategist at heart. That gives some people some pause when I merge it with journalism. But part of the reason that I started Courier was because I thought the most effective person in terms of shaping our politics and our social kind of situation in this country was Roger Ailes and Rupert Murdoch. And so Courier is not the antithesis or the left-wing version of Fox. It shouldn't be. Our audiences are very different and much more diverse. Our challenge is very different than the right's. But they used media to actually get a party in line around messaging and strategy, as opposed to trying to convince the party leaders themselves to be better messengers. That's not typically their forte. They're policymakers. I think we all know that, right? We're begging our Democratic leaders to be better communicators. That's not what most of them are actually there to do or how they got elected to begin with. And certainly the right relies very heavily on communicators who are not elected officials. Most of their strongest messengers outside of Trump himself, like Tucker Carlson or, you name any, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, these folks that toe the what we see as the party line, they were the ones who shaped the narrative and they aren't elected officials. So building a platform for that's important. The messaging is obviously critical. We tend to focus, and I can over focus on distribution because for so long I actually believe the distribution is the bigger problem. I don't believe that we got all of the messaging wrong. I think that there were some things that the Democrats overplayed their hand, but it was actually much more of a distribution problem. And a lot of folks like all of us, and I hate to use the term elite because it feels derogatory, but we are people who are proactively looking for information. We are consuming news because we care about it and we care deeply about it, especially if we're on the left side of history. And that is not the case for the majority of people. And so we are overwhelmed with information and news, right? We have the anxiety and the work in this work to prove it. Again, that's not the case for most people. And so they're not even being reached by Democratic messaging or good information. And so solving the distribution problem has always been something that's very important and critical and underinvested in on our side. But of course, the message matters. So at Courier, I think we've done a really incredible job of hiring a team of editors and reporters who are very aligned with our mission and values. And we are not, like traditional old school progressive media like The Nation or Mother Jones, which again are more for elite people, people who are much more highly informed and educated, where they're trying to push policy prescriptions a little bit through their advocacy journalism. That's not our role. I am not a policy person. My partner is, I am not. I actually care less about that. I care more about winning. I'm much more a zero-sum game type of strategist. And so I want the message that resonates the most with that audience to be the one that breaks through. And the reason I love local journalism in particular so much is because the most impactful stories that change hearts and minds are usually about individuals who are impacted. So the family who has a disabled son in school who is just going to lose all of the Medicaid funding that enables them to be able to get him the care he needs, as well as his schools, with DOE losing, Department of Education losing all of their funding from DOGE to be able to support kids that have special needs in the public school system. These are the stories that resonate with people that come from the communities that they know. And so we take that approach. So something else I could talk for hours about, so I won't, but I'm happy to sidebar with anyone, is that Democrats have become way too reliant on polling that is designed and written mostly by white men. Sorry, I just have to say it. It is written by communities of people who are not of the communities typically that they are surveying. And so there is a bias inherent in the beginning of the polls of what questions you're asking people and how you ask them. And that has, I think, led us astray from really understanding how to communicate in a very human and resonant and authentic way with voters. And so we don't over poll or test our messages for our journalism because we recognize that people connect connect through human emotion. The right really understands that, right? They trigger fear and hate all the time in order to get people to pay attention and get motivated and mobilized. And on the left, we tend to be really precious about that for good reasons and for difficult reasons. And so we're much more focused on how do we humanize the impacts of these policies on the right and on the left in a way that people will understand, instead of trying to gaslight them around a poll tested message about job growth or GDP, which doesn't actually resonate with most people.
Tara,
So
are you saying that it's not surprising if polls show that people don't like corruption, or that we should talk about jobs and how that's not actually revolutionary? Nor is it using our values to move people to our policy, and in terms of what we should be doing with polling. But to the question at hand, look, I've got one of the best research teams as it relates to Black audiences that exists, a highly skilled ethnographic research team in Black online spaces every single day. Last year, they didn't see a single digital ad in the spaces that we monitor.
That apparently we're being paid for by the $2 billion across
$2 billion, right?
Advertising, not reaching Black voters.
Like we didn't see one. We saw a lot of Black creators, right, with democratic messages that had mostly white audiences. But we didn't see, and so to be honest, I would have taken the second worst message we had in those spaces last year. Give me something, right? If we can repeat it, right, how successful can it be? And so to Tara's point, the distribution issue is so huge. But what we also have are new ways to test messaging. We don't have to stick with one or two or three, right? We can send out a bunch and we can see which of these posts are getting the most engagement, right? Which of these posts are our audiences liking or commenting on the most? That's not the same thing as to be clear, which is most persuasive, but it is a very, very, very important point that we have just kind of seeded. What is gaining the most engagement? What is gaining the most amplification, the most repetition? Because again, our brains will substitute that repetition for truth. And we've got to be able to another question, we've got to be able to both build audiences, and we can, in many of these platforms, buy audiences, which is where Onyx Impact is doing both, right? For Black men that are skeptic, a lot of them are in crypto or kind of finance kind of spaces, right? And so you can buy some of those followers, some of those pages. You can push ads to those spaces, and not pushing ads to persuade, but pushing ads to gain followers in some ways, and then being able to show those followers new messages. There's all sorts of things. And again, we do that all with an AI component that is adding massive scale all the time.
So when we look at this kind of imbalance in audience size online, it can seem really overwhelming. I think it's easier for people to think that unless we can create the next Joe Rogan, we can't really have an impact. Can you talk a little bit about how, the approaches you're using and reaching, special interest online communities and micro influencers can make a difference, and how do we scale this work? And I'm building a little bit off a question from Neil Glickman, who says, are we creating too many alternative media rather than coalescing around just a few?
I have a really exciting breaking news for this audience. We found the next Joe Rogan.
Oh my
So
gosh.
great.
It's Joe Rogan. He is so anti the ICE deportations. This is the thing folks don't understand. Joe Rogan is not a tool or a pawn of the right. He follows engagement of his audiences. His audiences are really mad about ICE right now. He's really mad about ICE right now. This is how the algorithms work. We live in a disinformation and attention economy. Joe Rogan is now ours. He is now anti-Trump and being wildly effective to his trusted audiences about things that he disagrees with in this. So I'm so happy to put that question to rest on our side. Who's our Joe Rogan? It's Joe Rogan. But no, it can be really overwhelming. And honestly, it's a really tough thing to address as someone who for 10 years has been trying to get the left to invest in infrastructure, media infrastructure year round. So I just have to like take a moment on it, because how overwhelming it is and how long the Republicans have been at that is why we're not getting the investment we need. It is too overwhelming. It creates paralysis. So people want to do the easy thing they know, which is put money into campaigns or put money into advertising programs that just are designed around that one specific campaign or race or movement. It has meant that we have not seen the investment writ large from the community or the biggest donors on our side into infrastructure. And so it is really tough. That said, technology and media is evolving so quickly and distributing so quickly that anybody can be a first mover now. We can be bigger than the right if there is massive investment. And I've never seen more attention and more receptivity from folks on our side about the need to invest in this work than I have right now. And you guys are all proof positive of that, starting a whole blue media fund like that. It's the stuff of my dreams from 7 years ago, guys. So I do feel more hope than I've ever felt because we are spreading the word that this matters. We don't replace campaigns. We set the information environment for them to be successful. They cannot be as successful without us being funded and resourced and working year round. And so I think that is what is important, and how we can get there is to actually believe in it and to invest in the groups that can. And to the question about should there be just one, no, we are an incredibly diverse bench. Like Esosa's work needs to be funded. To her point, there is no Black media that is owned or controlled by folks who share our values. And there's a lot of Black media that could be engaged by groups like Esosa's and others with resources for taking that work really seriously. But we need to have media that actually is entrenched in different communities that make up our very diverse, beautiful base. We cannot have one homogeneous, white, tribalized media like the right can. That is effective for them because their base is homogeneous. They've been able to peel off younger men of color. Yes, Esosa can speak to that more than I can, but truly their base and their strategy is evangelize their base and create wedges to keep as many of our folks home or turned off from Democrats, and that's how they win. The less people vote, the more they win often. And so it's just a simpler challenge than ours. Ours is how do we get everybody else to engage and be informed. Sorry, Esosa, go ahead.
No. And to your point, to the question, like, I've talked with Crooked Media often. Shaniqua Mukunda, who runs their political, she's one of my closest friends, right? What are they trying to do? They're trying to figure out how to, after all of these years, they still don't have Black folks following them, right? It's not their target audience. It probably won't be. Last year, 2 and 3 weeks before the election, we were able to buy a ton of space on the Breakfast Club. Many of y'all don't know what the Breakfast Club is. It is one of the largest YouTube and radio shows talking to Black audiences. The Breakfast Club has 5 times as many subscribers as Pod Save America. 5 times as many. And it was a desert of who was engaging with one of the largest audiences of our potential base, not just 5 times larger than Pod Save America. So it is fundamental to understand how harmful it can be to not really invest in individual communities and target in such a fragmented media ecosystem, right? That is just fundamentally, we're not going to find the one message. We're not going to find the one group. I don't know how much name recognition Midas Touch has amongst young Black people, but I would assume it is less than 3%, right? At its very, very best. But what we're doing is, like right now, our team has identified young Black men who are not interested in sports. They are being consumed by the right. That lifestyle content for young men is almost all right wing. So when we find shows that actually appeal to them, right, we take them, we clip them, we're going to move them into those universes. We're going to show as many Black men as possible that type of content, right? We're putting we don't need to use subliminal messages all the time. To Tara's point, sometimes like just getting folks to understand what's happening is so important. So how can we take all the largest podcasts, all our and put like a 30-second to 2-minute what's happening segment, right? Sponsored by Onyx Impact. That's going to reach millions and millions and millions again of Black audiences. Because if you look at what happened in 2024, as much as the need to sway independent voters is incredibly important in each and every election cycle, the bottoms dropped out in our cities, in our urban communities, in our suburbs. The level of disengagement that they were able to achieve, and conservatives were in these spaces constantly, was amazing. And so we really, really, really got to Tara's point, like that's when I started off saying, that's why being in these spaces with folks that are at the point where they're like, it's time for us to move, it's time for us to do something, it's time for us to act. It's just so important.
No, thank you for that, Esosa. So we're near the end of our program, and I wanted to give you each just 1 minute to speak to the specific thing that people on this call are helping to fund tonight. So Tara, it's the core accountability beat in Michigan. What does that look like? What is this work gonna be?
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit about it, but thank you for this opportunity. So the resources that you guys are providing that we're so grateful for are going to allow a few things. They're going to allow us to expand our reporting that localizes the impacts of the budget bill that will likely in some horrific form or another pass next week in the Senate, and then go back to the House. So this is the Medicaid cuts, this is SNAP benefits, this is the job losses of essential workers, especially in rural communities. So it's really about breaking down what's happening in Washington, and of course, who's accountable for it and the impacts it'll have that are deeply unpopular. It's also going to allow us to increase our subscriber growth. So the best way that we can communicate to folks is getting them off of the social media platforms we reach them on with our content, because those platforms are not trustworthy actors. They could shut us down over time. Thankfully, they haven't yet. But, I don't trust Mark Zuckerberg. I don't trust Elon Musk, obviously. And so bringing them into our email and text message funnel is really important, because then we own a relationship with folks. And so when we have resources, we're able to actually spend money to reach the audiences we want to bring into those funnels in Michigan. So that is the other program that we're scaling. But the accountability coverage work, it allows us to do more of it, to reach more local communities with local impact stories. So we are increasing their awareness and persuasion, for a more political term, to prime them once we then switch over to a lot more reporting specific to the candidates and races next year.
Terrific. Such important work. And Esosa, the Black Media Amplifier, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So we are finding and amplifying the best Black content that we can across the Black media landscape. We've got over 1,900 accounts that go from everywhere from Black news to Black sports to Black health and religion. We found where the gaps are in each of these buckets, right? And then what type of content, we've identified what type of content they seem to be engaging with the most, right? And so how do we both push more of the content that share our values, that they are engaging with most there, and two, how are we moving our own messaging into those spaces as well over time? And so the goal here is not tens of thousands of followers, but tens of millions of targeted Black views on this content. And so we're so excited to move and for you all to be investing in that, and investing in our AI tool, Aisha, that is going to be able to create tons of these accounts automatically. That's going to be able to create hundreds of posts a day going into these spaces. We are getting so much outreach from the AI community, from the Black and AI community, just wanting to invest in Aisha and what she's doing, because the possibilities are endless.
Well, thank you. Thank you both so much for all that you're doing and taking the time to be with us tonight. I want you to know that our community is committed to supporting your work and sees it as an important part of our work. Tonight's event was about helping to create conditions in which democracy can thrive and creating a healthier online media ecosystem. Our next event is about winning elections and will feature three House incumbents that are running in critical races, Representatives Laura Gillen, Josh Riley, and Nellie Pooh. And there's a link in chat to register for that. We think the 26 midterms are our next and best opportunity to regain the power that we need to counter authoritarianism. The following event will be about resistance and mass mobilization with Erica Chenoweth, a Kennedy School professor, who will talk about the role of civil resistance can play in restoring democracy in the face of autocratic threat. Professor Chenoweth's research laid the basis for the 3.5% rule, which you may have heard about, that when a country's population, 3.5% of a country's population is involved in a nonviolent mass action over a 7-day period, they're likely to be successful in achieving their goals. So that's what's coming up. If you're new to Force Multiplier, we invite you to stay on after the event for a 10-minute info session about our three-pronged strategy and how you can get more involved. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight and supporting the Blue Digital Media Fund. I hope we'll see you at future events.